terrible at singing. I don't play any musical instruments. I have the will. I have a guitar that I bought for an ex-girlfriend that she when we broke up I took back as as young immature boyfriends do. So I took the guitar back in the view that I'm going to learn to play this thing, and then I never learned, but I've still got the guitar, but no guitar strings.
I also have a guitar that has been around for years.
Yeah.
And it's just inventory now.
Yeah, just like
touch it.
Because it's just a guitar is something that you own, that lives with you, that I think I'm going to learn to play it at some point. You're like, it's gonna be in there. So I don't know. I've never been able to get rid of it, but so I have a guitar now.
I still have hope. One day, I hope it will happen. But facts are stacking up against me.
Exactly, because you keep layering other stuff on. Like guitar is very hard to sort of place as the thing that you need to spend some time on. Like I don't know as an entrepreneur, but like you're expected to balance your time between be healthy, do your workouts, then be excellent at your work, and then make sure you make time for downtime, and then you've got your networking piece. So where additional hobbies squeeze in, I have no idea. I don't know how you manage it.
I think that's a whole masterclass subject.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I try to do my best, but to be honest, but I think for me it's not always about time, it's about mental capacity. And because you have to learn and develop and grow so much as an entrepreneur, I'm maxed out on my capacity to learn new things in my free time. And for me, sometimes I just need to relax. I just need to have a day where I go hiking or do something that doesn't require actually learning anything. So I think for me, that's why some of those other hobbies and playing instruments and things are on hold at the moment. I just don't have mental capacity for it. Yeah,
so mental capacity is like an interesting thing to think about, because it's like that's you're applying so much to growth in other areas, so then trying to create growth in like new hobbies is quite a difficult thing. It becomes quite a big sacrifice, So, and then you kind of get to the end of a project and I don't know, maybe you can feel a little bit hollow or like empty at the end of these things. So you fill it with a new project because, I don't know, you don't have this additional hobby or this additional skill set that you have. I don't know if you've left any hobbies or skills behind that you kind of regret.
Kind of. But it's a yes and no answer.
Yeah.
I used to play piano for many years, and for I think 12 or 13 years, and I really do miss that sometimes. But I'm a solopreneur, so I spend so much time on my own with myself and my own thoughts already, and having an additional hobby that is all about me and me learning new things with me is not giving me any of those stimulations I need at the moment. For me, it's a thing I've put on hold for many years, and I'm looking into the future thinking like, oh, it would be nice one day to be able to take lessons again and actually dedicate time. But also that particular hobby or that particular instrument requires a lot of dedication and work, and you have to play a few hours a week to be able to progress and keep up your skills. And that's not, I do miss it, but I don't have the capacity right now, and it doesn't recharge me. But I did take on equestrian lessons, which is a new thing. And that gives me a lot of challenges, and it stimulates me a lot. And it ties very well together with the business side of things that I need to learn.
In what way?
It's all about your leadership skills and you being embodied in the way you want to do things. And if you don't feel that certainty in your body at the same time as you give signals, the horse will not listen to you. So you have to have that full dedication and commitment and take charge. And for me, that has been one of the more challenging parts in recent years. Once you're in business and you experience setbacks and challenging situations and so on, I kind of started slacking off a little bit, or doing things without really meaning them and trying them, but kind of guarding myself from failure and not kind of going a little bit for it, but not enough for it to be dangerous.
Like it's almost like being vulnerable, right? Like you kind of say like, I know where the safe space of this endeavor is, so I'll stay on the safe side of it.
Exactly.
But the risky side, where the development's going to happen, I'm not quite ready to sort of embark on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I needed to, I started taking equestrian lessons for many reasons, but also because I do need to have a hobby. I do need to have something in my calendar that is my time. I'm dedicating to doing it. I don't want to live a life that is my business. My business is not equal my life, but sometimes it just is. That's what it is, being a business owner. So for me, it was really important to bookmark some time and do something that I could enjoy and also progress in. It's very important for me when I do hobbies that I feel some kind of development, and it needs to give me joy, and I need to feel that I'm also expanding. That's my personal preferences for hobbies. And at that time, I really needed to relearn how to lead and relearn how to trust myself and my leading abilities. And that has given me that.
Yeah, that's like, also, I think in terms of hobbies, I think, as a solopreneur, someone who is in your own thoughts and thinking about how to do things, a hobby like horse riding or whatever it is that forces you to be in the present is really important, because you are now living here. You're not thinking about the strategy of tomorrow. You're thinking about what I need to do to move this horse left or right, or to stop, whatever it is. But that is now the requirement. And for an hour and a half, that's where you are. So it's you're developing and you're learning, but you're also living in the present, which is a critical piece.
Yeah, and I think there's so much about mindset as an entrepreneur, and one of my favorite is meditation. And I am so bad at meditation, and I can't sit still, and I need to have physical activity as well, and I need to do meditation in a little bit of a different form. But for many years, I thought meditation was one thing. I thought it was sitting down and being mindful of the present. And if I don't have some kind of physical stimulation, it's horrible for me. I don't reset at all. I don't enjoy that experience. And hiking is also a type of meditation, I've eventually learned. And equestrian lessons and riding on horses is a little bit similar, because you do have to stay in the present, and there's only the present. And if you disconnect from the present, your horse will make sure to get you back to the present.
Yeah.
And so you just don't even think about other things, and it's such a nice reset, because it's forcing you to do that, but not in an unpleasant way. For me, it's very enjoyable. And after that, I feel like that's my meditation. I've been reset, and then I go about my day in a very different way.
Yeah, I think, again, just saying with the horse riding or just the connection with the horse, like at some point, you're not going to be thinking too much around body positioning, what you're doing. You'll be more connected to the horse. And that then gives you a new type of meditation, where you're not actively thinking about left, right, how do I do this? How should I trot? How should I canter? You're thinking you could just be meandering along on the path and just connected. And that is a new type of meditation. So it really is, it's a critical piece around like leadership development, to be able to connect with yourself, to understand how you work and find like outputs along the way. I wanted to just jump back a little bit. So you're a solopreneur, like what's the journey? Like how have you ended up here? And why has this been the right path for you?
Oh, that is a long
We got time. It's a long format conversation. Go ahead, or go back as far as you're comfortable. Like, I don't mind talking about childhood trauma. Someone said something bad, and then you ended up saying, "I'm doing this myself."
So I've always had some entrepreneurial elements to me, and even when I was younger and I was studying, everyone would be like, "Gabby, she's gonna work on home, or she's going to start a company," because I have I'm not a patient person. I'm not patient at all in a lot of things in life. And I'm always striving to be the best in things I do. I'm highly competitive as well. And when I started my professional life, I graduated top universities. I was always the best student at everything I did. I built my career very meticulously. I was very strategic in the types of jobs I took. And then I completed my master's degree and I started my first full-time job in corporate. And I quickly realized that that was just a horrible cultural fit for me. And out of necessity, I just quit. I was like, it can't get worse. This is horrible.
Mm.
And I just...
What particularly was bad for you?
For me, there were quite a few things. And I think ultimately the small things built up to big things. So in the short term, I was really frustrated with the timeline of career progression in corporate, that it's measured by years in a certain position versus output or results. So for me, that's way too slow for me to progress in my career, especially working in marketing that as a field moves so fast. In 2 years, we can have new things, new technologies, new opportunities. I don't want to be missing out of all those things. So career progression was one. Another thing was professional progression. There's a much longer span between new technologies and approval of those technologies in a corporate setting, and you don't have access to test and learn as many things. And for me, coming from a more digital background in marketing, that grew to be quite a big frustration, and I really felt that as a professional, I was lagging behind, seeing everything that was happening in the market. It made me quite uncomfortable building more skills in how to be in a corporate setting versus how to be the best marketing person that I could be. And I think what ultimately pushed me over the edge was that I just couldn't see any people further ahead in that career progression that lived a life that I would find fulfilling. I didn't see that disconnect between my ideal goal is to work less the more I progress. I want to build a career that drives revenue, that gives me fulfillment, but also at one time I want to be able to detach myself in terms of time. And that is not a calculation at that time you could do it corporate, and I still haven't seen it being done in corporate. So for me, the thing I was building towards in that career progression wasn't really aligned with what I would want for myself in 15 or 20 years. And I just couldn't see that happening anywhere else besides when you look to entrepreneurs, because they do things differently. So that's what I started, and I just quit, and I didn't have anything else on hand. And I thought, it can't get worse. It can only be better from here. And then I went through several stages of development as an entrepreneur. I started out on my own as a freelancer. And this was almost 7 years back when it was such a weird time. Everyone was like, ooh, freelancers, are they unemployed? Are they less?
Couldn't get a job.
Exactly. Couldn't get a job. What are they doing? Are they just like freelancers, but actually backpacking somewhere, So it definitely took a hit on my ego and my self-worth in terms of and a lot of people thought that I just let go of this great career. Suddenly, did you just give it all up? Did you lose ambition? Did you lose,
what broke, right?
Exactly.
Something must have broken,
Something must have broken. And I think for me, I was very clear. For me, it was a broken system. I don't want to be a part of a system I feel is broken, and there has to be another path. I just haven't seen it yet. And I don't know people who've walked this path in person, but I'm pretty sure it's there. I've heard it somewhere that it's doable. And from then on, I kept building, and I went through a few iterations to figure out who am I as an entrepreneur or freelancer. Am I even an entrepreneur as a freelancer?
Yeah.
And at one point, I also fell into the trap of thinking that you need funding and you need to raise capital and you need to do big things and build teams and so on. And I quickly realized that I'm actually not in it for that. And that's when the first iteration of solopreneurs came out that I actually looked up to, and I could see some role models in the way that they build their businesses, the values they stand for, and also the ambition they have, that you can be a fully operational entity of one, servicing a big market, having excellent profit margins, and being really ambitious about what you do and super good at what you do, but it doesn't come at the cost of taking more on people, more debt, more responsibilities for other people's lives.
Yeah, which is a big stressor in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, that's maybe later. At this stage in my entrepreneurial journey, I'm still very happy about, I want to surround myself with people who align with my values. I want to have communities around me. I want to have support. But at this point, I'm not in a place where I want to take responsibility for employees. So that's what I found in my identity as an entrepreneur. Like, I finally know what I want and what I stand for and what my values are and how I want to interact in the business world. And it has been a long journey, and it took a while before I saw role models that I could look up to that did it the way that I wanted to do.
Makes sense. And so just to jump in, it's put you on the spot here, but what are those values now? Like, what have you identified as your values or as your personal vision that you're currently building? Are you very clear on that, or is it still a work in progress?
On some parts I'm very clear, and on some parts it's still a work in progress. So some of the values are very, I would say, fundamental as a professional. I'm committed to excellence. I want to actually make transformations for my clients. I do keep my word. I don't want to promise anything if I'm beforehand know that I will not be able to deliver. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to say the truth to my clients. And for me, that has been very I have been enabled to do that because I don't have a team of people that I need to secure paychecks for. Mm. So I have more flexibility in the way that I can work with clients and the way I can deal with.
And who you work with, right?
And who I work with.
Yeah.
And that for me has been very important. Again, coming from a corporate situation that I wasn't happy about, one of my biggest things was being able to be in charge of the skills that I want to learn and the skills that I can match with the market, and developing a professional area of expertise that the market is willing to pay for, that is in times with the trends, but also something that I can grow and learn with and work with amazing people who have visions, who want to be positive change makers in the world.
No, that's a massive privilege, actually, I think, and I think that must be one of the main perks of being a solopreneur, because you can be quite selective and you can sync up your personal and professional values quite closely. I think that a lot of people battle with that. Like, if you, just as a professional looking for work, you're trying to align with a company who has the same values, which is a very difficult thing to do whenever the company's objectives are to try and make money. At some point, something's going to get a bit warped. And then as an entrepreneur, you have real capital pressure of, like, I have to make this money. So you might ride with a couple of clients for longer than you would actually like to do it because you have the responsibility of paying salaries. So that's a massive perk. The one downside in my mind is that it's always on you. Right? So who do you confide in, or what's your sounding board network to help you sort of figure through some of the challenges that you have?
Yeah, that has been absolutely the biggest challenge. And I think for many years I didn't have that support system, and I was trying to find it. So the first thing I did was I spent every penny I had on just getting a table at a co-work where other entrepreneurs were. And I remember coming from a corporate background, and I felt almost stripped of my identity, and you had to unlearn so many things and learn so many new things and new ways of doing things. And I got the absolutely cheapest table. It was in the middle of a big room and right next to the coffee maker, and it was just like horrible noise all the time. And I sat at that table, and people were so nice, and they came over and they're like, "Oh yeah, like, what's your plan? I'm like, I don't know. I just quit. And like, now I have to figure it out. But
I just got a desk, man.
yeah, exactly.
This is where
I'm like looking at, like, I think every entrepreneur starts this way. I'm like, I'm looking at financial things and trading and investment or whatever. I'm looking at e-commerce and I'm looking at what's going on in the field I come from, which is marketing. And I'm just trying to like assess each of these and see what's happening.
Like, which one fits now?
What fits? What should I do? I need to eat.
And so how did you end up making the choice?
Well, I think first of all, people were nice. They came over and they were like, oh yeah, I was the same. That was me a year ago. And actually this person and this person and this person, they all started at this desk and then we upgraded to this desk and then we upgraded to the closed office space and we're still alive. So
that's awesome.
Rule number one is you just are capable of so much more than you thought possible when you start out. And everyone eventually makes it if they keep trying and committing. For me, choosing my area was both easy and hard. I've been through various ventures. I've always been a marketing and communications person and a branding person at heart. So for me, no matter what I did, I knew that would be my strength. Finding the shape and form of that has been quite challenging. And it's only now that I feel like I've finally landed in the area that I feel comfortable with, that I service my clients in the way I give them the value that I want to deliver. Like I finally found that level of excellence that I can deliver and match it with a field where the market is also there for it.
Yeah, and so just to clarify for people listening, it's personal branding, right? It's building a personal brand. So you've kind of, actually you explained it. Like what I know about personal branding is dangerous, but my view on it is like, hey, it's only for people who are like the Gary V's and the Jordan Petersons. They are the people who need a personal brand because they need to have some sort of public image that's maintained. But maybe you could just talk a little bit more about what personal branding is and if I've correctly summarized what you do.
Yeah, personal branding, it's very important for me to highlight that I build professional personal brands.
Okay.
And personal branding is a big thing, and there's also a big culture of like reality TV and influencer culture that also has a lot of personal branding elements to it, and that's not what I do. I build professional personal brands for C-suite executives and founders, and for them having a personal brand is extremely important for many reasons. As a founder, quite a few founders I talk with have experienced the same as I did. When you leave corporate or you have had a big logo next to your name, it can open so many doors for you. And when you are employed by an organization or you work with an organization that has that logo, you can almost call anyone and say your name. This is Gabriele from X organization, and it would just give you access to meetings or, business opportunities. And when you leave that, you have to count on your own name and you have to make your own name work for you and open doors. And when you access it from a business perspective, as a founder, you don't have that timeline, you don't have that capital, you don't have that opportunity to build a big multinational logo or name that can open doors for you in any country. So you have to invest that usually in your own name, which will then open doors for you. And that is one of the biggest shifts, I think, because even a few years back as a founder, you would still think about having the logo, having the right name, having marketing initiatives invested in your company. And now the market has changed a lot, even since the last year. Funding is very different than it used to be. So now it's more about building those connections. And it's always been about connections, and all brands, doesn't matter if it's a consumer brand or a corporate brand, they do evoke emotions and they do evoke connection with their target audience. And as a personal brand, you can do the same, but now you have digital media that can help you scale that connection. They can help you scale your reputation and get your foot in the door to conversations with people that align with your vision, with your values. So personal branding has changed a lot. Even when I started my self-employment journey.
When you moved to your desk.
When I moved to a desk.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually already then came to me and they're like, oh my God, you have a master's degree in branding and communications management. You should definitely do personal branding. Everyone is hungry for this. Everyone wants it. It's right up your alley. And I just flat out said, no, I don't want to do this. I've worked with marketing before. I've worked with influencer management. I've worked with all of these things, and I do not align with those values. I don't want to push more of this into the world. And I went in a completely different direction. And then I started building my own ventures, and then I realized, great, I do not have the funding. I do not have the budget to get this show up and running in terms of having a brand. So I need to find out a way to do it myself. And for many years, my first business ran for 4 years, based 100% off of references. And at one point, I got quite scared because I realized that if those references run up, not because I'm doing a bad job, but it's just because I rely on their network.
And the timing of it, and you're not a priority to them, you know.
Exactly. And I got a little bit scared, and I thought, okay, maybe I should actually start doing something actively about it. And since I didn't have the budget to actually hire someone and put the whole thing together for me, I started testing LinkedIn out a little bit. And I did that over several years with limited success until I did get leads, to be fair, but I just didn't really commit to the platform because I kept going on there for a little bit, and then I forgot, and then I got clients, and then I got back. And then at one point I had a new business at that time, and then I needed to get leads on a ridiculously low marketing budget, as most founders have tried.
Exactly.
And then I actually started going to LinkedIn, like going to the gym. I was like, okay, we need to build muscle. We need to keep going, keep learning, keep iterating, and just try and try and try and try. And one part of it is just persistence. And as a marketing person, you know, you need to test and iterate and test and iterate and test and iterate until something hits. But the other part is ego, because it's so hard when you do things on your own name. And every time you go there, you just look like an idiot in public until you figure out what you're doing. And a few months into that run, I had a viral post. So I gained absolute crazy virality. It got 21K likes, and my inbox was just flooded. My connections requests were off the charts, and I got so many leads for my business that I had at that time. And I realized that value in marketing spend for that amount of leads and reach and awareness and engagement would have been crazy if I had to put that into traditional media or even paid media. So I started taking LinkedIn much more seriously, and I started actually building my content in a different way and posting more about my journey and my story and building my business around my name instead of building it about selling for the consumer.
Makes sense.
And that built much better connection. And when that business went under, quite a few people had already come to me and asked me for advice and help and, you know, just tips and tricks. How do you do this? And then I eventually decided that I actually really enjoyed this, and I actually really like doing this and help other people succeeding, and I can see the results, and I've tried it myself. And I also know how much work and dedication and commitment it takes before you find that formula to actually make it work. So that's how it started. And now I do see those results coming in terms of having that ability to build connection and emotional connection on top of your thought leadership. And I think that's what's really exciting about building professional brands right now, is that we are moving away from an era of information because information and access to information and actually access to interpreted information has changed so much during, again, the last year. So now what is more important is building rapport and building, it's not even about getting attention anymore, it's about being relevant and understanding a target audience and building that connection and building that relationship and putting human first back in business.
No, that's so human first. There's like so much that you've just spoken about that I want to dig in. The one thing that I'd like to come back on, the business failure and then the transition to the sort of your personal branding journey. And but more than that is like the crafting of the narrative that generates the emotion. That must be quite a difficult thing to do. Like when I think about a Jordan Peterson as an example, I just have to see his face to know what he's about.
Yeah.
Right? Like I already have a good sense of he's going to talk about this in this way, and he becomes immediately relatable to a lot of the things that I think. Joe Rogan would be the same.
Yeah.
Gary V is another one. Any sort of name that you sort of put up, Steve Jobs, whatever, you've got a very clear feeling attached to that person. So what develops first in terms of developing your personal brand? Is it what you say and the content, like collecting that in a way and presenting that? How does the development actually start?
It's I wouldn't say the development starts at one point, but you have to fabricate it or consolidate it at one point and figure out what you want to scale. Because as a professional, no matter if you're a middle management or senior management or C-suite or a founder, you do have a reputation already. If you talk with people that have been working with you or interacted with you as a professional, they would have some commonalities to share. And so you do have a personal brand to some extent, whether or not you're aware of it. The thing that comes into play is when you want to build it strategically and you want to scale it strategically. And that is a very different way of approaching it, because then you start thinking about what do people actually think about me and what do I actually want them to think about me.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that must be quite a difficult thing, because if you go wrong, this is like could be a permanent badge, like right. Like if you get that message wrong, how do you then create the new message? Or are people's attention span short enough that you can just take a cool off period and then come back again with something completely new?
Well, when it comes to professional personal branding, it's not that crazy. I wouldn't say that Joe Rogan he has a massive brand, but he's approached it a bit differently.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on who you are as a person, what your goals are, and how comfortable you are about sharing. And there are different layers and different ways of approaching it, but you have to have an end goal in mind. You have to know what you want to achieve. And some people do want to be rebels online. And that works for them. Maybe they want to attract someone.
Anti-establishment,
exactly.
Right? Like that's my plot. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the beautiful thing with personal branding is if you do it with integrity, you can be you can have variations of different personal brands that are all valid and they're all right for the target audience they serve. And you can still be you in your professional variation. It's like icon brands. Harley Davidson is a pretty rebellic outlaw brand, and it attracts just the right audience. You see them as super competent, super good at what they do, but they have a clear target audience, and they're not for everyone. And that's how personal brands work too.
Yeah, well, Harley Davidson probably attracting quite a lot of midlife crisis at the moment. But initially, rebel. But I get your point in terms of how that is. I think about this in terms of myself and what I want to put out there, and trying to make my personal brand like go somewhere or to be something or to walk in the room kind of before me is quite a difficult thing. And I think you've also got to get over yourself a little bit, because when you do start to put yourself out there publicly, you are a public scrutiny, and so it must be some sort of conditioning that you have to make to sort of get over that public scrutiny. Is that something that you also look like? Okay, we're going to put this out, but this could bring this type of attention for you. Do you help coach through that?
I do set some initial stages because it's for everyone. It's a topic of conversation, and one of the things I tell that can be polarizing is that you are in business and your goal is to stay in business and to expand on that business. So you have to focus on the opinion of those people who pay you now or who will pay you in the future. And that's it. Because everyone will have opinions. Your mom, your dad, your family, your friends, people who knew you in the past, everyone probably wants the best for you and have so many opinions about what you do. And you just need to zone it out because it's not relevant for your business goals. And when you approach it that way, it becomes much easier to figure out what should I share, how should I share it, and what is the professional identity I want to build around myself. And you actually stop caring much less about what other people think because you know what your mission is with this brand.
That's in professional and personal branding, like that is a very important thing to do anyway, right? Whatever you're going to try and do, if you want to become an entrepreneur, if you want to, pick a job, if you want to get married, whatever it is, the end of the day, you're sort of catering to yourself, and you're going to say well, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to be, and this is how I'm going to go about doing that. And you're going to lose some people along the way because they just don't fit. But that's about building an authentic network for yourself, right? That's kind of what the end goal is. Professional brand, if I'm saying X online, or if I'm saying X in the public space, that X should attract the like-minded individuals, and that will breed more momentum for whatever your vision is trying to create. And so you can't get caught up in the naysayers. And I think and eventually become too noisy anyway. The bigger you come, the more people are going to try and pull away from what you've created.
But I think the second thing I always tell clients is that you are building a professional brand, and the bigger you get in your brand, the more you can also expand on other topics. But what you should always think about is just think back. When I say this or post this or I have an opinion about this, would I be cool talking about this at any business situation? Would I be talking about this at a client dinner? If it came up at a big pitch, would I be comfortable talking about this? And if the answer is no, then there's no need to spread it to the world. But if the answer is yes, and you really do believe in this thing, and you really stand behind that opinion, then sure, go ahead. So it's more about self-regulating what you want for yourself in the future and how you want to meet people. Also, some personal branding is just opening conversations. If people are more comfortable with you, know you better, they might also approach you more easily when they think about your thought leadership topic or your expertise.
Yeah, I think, just on that is that self-regulation piece is where a lot of people kind of fall down, is that they've built a platform and then they get political, for instance, where the political stance that they're taking has nothing to do with their brand or their professional objectives, right? And so then you're now opening yourself up for some big damage, right? And so you say, well, now you've taken a political stance on something that might be quite controversial, and cool, you're entitled to your personal opinions, but now you've exposed your business or your professional brand to that, and that now is going to be at serious risk.
I think it always depends on your goal, because if you just do things without having a goal, then it's more damage than, there's probably more downside than upside. If you are in a big transition, if you're leaving a startup behind or a corporation behind, I do have clients where we need to refresh their brand. Maybe a classic example is that if you're a founder or if you're a co-owner, you do have some guidelines as what to say in public and how to behave. And when you want to make that transition into becoming maybe an investor or advisor, you actually need to become much more relatable on a human level. And people don't, because people want to confide in you as a confidant in, you know, their business dealings. And as an investor, you also need to build a lot of trust. So in those transitions, it's not necessarily that you have to be political, but you have to go through some changes in the way that you communicate and how you let the world see you. And that can be a little bit polarizing, but it's like in all updates in life and all upgrades, is a transition you go through, and eventually you let go of some people and then you attract the right people.
Yeah, and that's quite a difficult transition for a lot of people, because you're in limbo, right? Like, and just jumping right back, is that you spoke about people saying, hey, you should get into personal branding. And you were like, no, I've put enough of this out into the world. What did you mean, I've put enough of this out into the world? What was the negative aspect that you didn't want to be attached to anymore in terms of branding and marketing?
I think not in terms of general branding and marketing, but in terms of what the influencer culture was at that point. LinkedIn at that point was not a place to really build thought leadership. It was a place to update your job.
Your CV, right? Like, CV, get a new job. Yeah.
Get a new job. So for me, I didn't even see that as a valid business opportunity to build professional personal brands. It was just this dusty platform where you really kind of had to be there.
Just kept your CV up to date,
exactly.
Right? Like, and then if there's a faster way than typing it out, you could just share it with someone. Like, that's my LinkedIn. And even when you did that, they were still waiting for the paper one, right? Like, it's just in a weird place. Yeah.
So what I thought about initially about personal branding is more the fashion part of it and the creative part of it, where you build influencer brands for consumer brands. So you have an influencer culture for consumer brands.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been working a fair share with that. And I didn't like a lot of the things that stands for. And some of these influencers are super talented, and there's no...
Yeah, it's a whole new thing.
It's a whole new thing.
Yeah.
And the amount of dedication and work that it takes to become an influencer at that level or that scale, I truly respect that. But for me, I just didn't see a fit between who I am as a person and the type of people I want to work with. I did work with fashion brands before, and I worked with more creative industries, and I realized that the type of people I work best with come from a more business background and more corporate, let's say, background, and have different values, different goals, different ways of doing business. So it was also more personal alignment with what I felt I could be in my day-to-day and how I could manage these things. And influencer marketing is huge. It's a huge business.
Yeah. It was one of my previous startups, actually.
Yeah.
So it's huge.
So the market is there for it. I didn't want to become a manager. That was not in my vision as a business owner. And consumption culture is so big, and I just didn't want to promote more perishable things or more things that are stuff. Exactly, massive consumption of stuff that we don't need, pushed by people that we don't know, really, like for values that we don't align to. Like, there's a lot that just doesn't make sense. But I kind of get where you're going in terms of this, and it does make sense. Like, putting, like, people out there in an authentic way that's going to move the world forward is like a really good thing. You can see a lot of positives to doing that. Like, if you have a C-suite exec who's driving sustainability in a new way, what a great way to get his voice or her voice out there. His or hers, the next question for me is like, is it very different online for men and women? Like, do they have, is there a very different way to craft this, or is it all pretty standard? Is the model the same for both? the model is different for each individual.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily gender specific. I think the experience could be different, but it again depends on the topics you talk about. And I think previously there has been some different experiences also on LinkedIn for women, and now they have flagged a lot of accounts and banned a lot of things. They have had a lot of initiatives to clear inappropriate messages in your inboxes. So for me personally, it doesn't appear that much before. And I haven't been in this industry as a man. So obviously I don't know like how that experience is.
Yeah, I can't help you either, I'm afraid. I'm a man, but I haven't been in the industry. So.
But yes, I mean, I've also received super inappropriate things in my inbox, and it's just, it is things that happen, like things happen.
Social media is learning, right? Like the cultures are learning, and where things are appropriate is learning, right? Like I think that, you know, LinkedIn before Tinder was like an easy in, right? Like it was, but now there's a place for that, right? Like these things are also like learning in terms of what their responsibilities should be. Facebook, in terms of like, you know, people manipulation and their algorithms, everybody's kind of like being put under scrutiny now to say what is right versus what is wrong and what is appropriate. And the audience, or like, that's the cool thing about social media, is like the social community is dictating what their rules and standards are for various things. Like, you know, even LinkedIn is like, it's very taboo now to put non-business related content. You see some people try to angle it in the weirdest way, but now there's a place for it, like, and so you have to figure out like where you place what. It's I think a lot of people are sort of catching up, but yeah, I can definitely empathize with you getting inappropriate messages. Not that I've had any sense to me, but
I actually think I had one that like trumped them all, and it was such an unexpected way that I also got curious, right? So that was, I think, a year and a half ago or something, after my post went viral. I got so many weird requests and so many weird things, not necessarily inappropriate, but just people being very opportunistic about what I could do for them in terms of business.
Why don't you do this thing for me? I'm going to give you nothing for it, but it'll be good for your brand.
Exactly. We have this startup. I think you should get a call with us. And I'm like, what's in it for me?
Exactly.
And that happens all the time, and you have to filter that through. But one of them that I think still stands out is a dating agency that specializes in matching successful men with successful women. And the proposition is fair, and they were specializing in matching like founders with founders. And I get this message, and I reached out to my own like community. I was like, this is hilarious. We need to see what this goes, because it's highly against the rules. It's
so what actually happened? Did the agency reach out, or did someone a potential dating candidate reach out?
The agency reached out to me in my DMs.
Okay.
And they asked...
On LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn.
Okay.
And they're like, you seem single. And I was like...
What makes me seem single?
What makes me seem like... Why is this
That's a bit mean. Why do I seem single? Yeah.
And there were just so many things where I just got a kick out of exploring like where this goes, because there were so many like... the whole conversation, just I really wanted to see, you know, what are they thinking? What are they doing? How does this work?
Yeah.
And it's such a different way of, as a business owner, I was like, also, I kind of see where they're going. Like, it kind of makes sense.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Let's see the execution of
tell
this
me more,
in action.
Yeah.
And then they go on with like, you know, we have these candidates you should meet, and how about this time in 2 weeks, whatever. And I said, like, that sounds interesting. I'm quite busy. I can do another time. And then they go on, well, this person is an actual founder and are super busy and don't have any time. And I'm sure you understand that this is the only time they can do it.
No, well, thanks very much. I'm also an actual founder, and I'm also actually very busy. That's crazy.
And then actually after that conversation, I didn't reply. I didn't do anything. I was like, this is just like, it was getting way out of hand. And I don't want to be treated like that by anyone. This should not be the initial conversation for anything. And then actually they got flagged by LinkedIn, so someone reported them, and they shut down the whole thing.
That's crazy.
And that was just. I always get amazed by the creativity of people as well. How creative people are in.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the baiting in that is like really, it's inappropriate, but it's very good. Like, it's stuff.
And especially as a marketing person, I'm always so curious. I'm oh,
you want to see how that's going to play out. I can definitely like imagine like what that must be like, but. Yeah, I just don't know now, where we go from here in terms of like the world and these platforms and what we should and shouldn't be doing online. Like it seems like it's getting to a point of absolute chaos. Like there's just too much going on at the moment.
I think that is true, but actually a lot of younger people also come to LinkedIn now because LinkedIn has a really comfortable tone of voice, and it's one of the platforms that has the least hate speech and the least negative atmosphere. So it's beginning to come in people much younger than me that might not have a career yet. I actually enjoying spending time there because of the tone of voice is quite supportive and inclusive.
Yeah, it's constructive,
overall.
right?
It's constructive, yes.
Yeah.
And it's more, what I like about it is it's a professional, constructive atmosphere, and you either support each other. If some debates happen, it's more a debate form, and you can agree to disagree in most cases. And I think that is a much more healthy way of being online. And I think that also comes from LinkedIn, and they have curated their community terms in terms of service and so on.
It's very clear, right? Like it's very clear what we're here to do.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with that, is that we're all just getting on with it. Like we're building our lives. Like that's what I feel. LinkedIn's my main platform, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I just feel like everybody there is just getting on with it. They're not getting caught up in the noise of the world.
Yeah.
And there's so much noise on other platforms that the only way to get visibility is to be incredibly controversial.
Yeah.
You're either for something or you're against something. There's no like kind of middle ground.
Yeah.
And so then sort of surfing through those spaces becomes like, sort of meandering through like a lot of stuff that's actually just trying to hook you the whole time.
Yeah.
Whereas you can go and sit on LinkedIn and say, well, I want to learn about something, or I want to connect to people who help move my business forward, or I want to, like that's the logic there. So there's no time for actually, polarizing, opinionated stuff. It just doesn't seem to fit very well.
Well, some of it is, but it's usually in a professional context.
You get the meaning of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you either agree with it or you don't agree with it, but it doesn't turn into this whole like we should all boycott you and cancel you.
Yeah, I think I've recently, as you grow, you also experience more engagement and more people. And one of my favorite things to deal with is I've seen a new trend popping up. So when I post something that is clearly helpful, some people will try to boost their own authority by trying to ask a stupid question that is opposite of what I said. And then when I answer them, they're like, oh yeah, of course, that's also what I meant. That's also what I thought. I just wanted to check your knowledge on this.
Like, I'm an opinion leader and that I've caught you on. It's like, of course I knew that was a carjack, like what, like it's just, I don't know. LinkedIn's an interesting place, and the persona that you create on there is like also interesting. But I see that a lot of people are starting to sort of blend that now with their personal and their professional. Like people are openly saying like, I'm a father, like they're highlighting what they stand for more, because I think in today's age, those things are becoming very close. Like, your who you are professionally and who you are personally are very, very becoming closer. Like, I think.
I don't think it's necessarily the trend I see. I see the trend of mixing those two spheres, but I think it's more a signal of the values you have. The way you run your business, the way you lead your people, that you do understand that your work is not your family, or you don't want to sacrifice your personal life to your private life. And I think it's more about signaling those values. It's been there for a while, but it's been something that we can talk more about after COVID and lockdowns, and after we had to work from home, all of us. At that time, LinkedIn also looked very different because people started posting, photos and stories from their home work environment.
Yeah.
And that's detached more now. But still, the values that came in are here to stay, and people have re-evaluated their work lives and their purpose and their mission and the values they have. And a lot of people have changed jobs and started their own thing. And that's where those signals come in, because as a prospect or a follower, you can clearly read those signals. And if it says father, investor, founder, you'll be like, oh, actually, this seems like a person that resonates with the values I have, because I'm also a founder, but I know that my business is not my family. I don't treat my business like my family. It's my professional life and my private life are two separate things, but I can be in a professional setting as a professional person in all my dimensions.
I think that trying to sort of distill the values there is a difficult job, right? Like, because I think we're all a little bit of something all of the time. So trying to put that out there is like, LinkedIn as an example, like as a VC, a value set is different. As an entrepreneur, it's different. And as a professional, it's different. Like as a professional trying to attract employment or potential better opportunities is different. Entrepreneurs saying like, I want to attract staff and clients. And so finding your value set and putting that out there in the correct way is quite a challenge.
It is, but I think sometimes we approach it a little bit in the wrong way, because what I do with the people I work with is we've had such a long time where thought leadership was about sharing knowledge and sharing info. And as a human being in a corporate setting, you would never approach a prospect and just start talking facts. You wouldn't just like blab, things in their head and have like a monologue about the newest updates in AI. You would actually, have a more full conversation.
You build it, right? Like you build the layers of it till you get to and deliver the points in a more constructive way.
Exactly, and that's just how you need to think about digital media, because it is a different format. You don't have all the layers to you as a person, and it often feels like you need to overstep your boundaries, or you need to let people in. But in fact, it's just because the media doesn't support you as a multi-dimensional person. Like people would meet you at a client dinner or, in a professional setting. So you have to do those extra things that seem uncomfortable. Posting photos of yourself, for example, can seem a little bit unnatural, but in fact, it really helps people relate to you more or recognize you better if they meet you at a conference. And it's not being too much or being, awkward or cringy. It's just very normal that if you went into a business setting, you would be there in person.
Right? Like, so it's the digital version of you. So it needs to emulate that in a way. We try to do the same with restaurants. Like we work with them a lot on Zomato and trying to say like, this is a digital representation of your restaurant.
Yeah.
So the ratings, the menu, how you respond to customers, all of these things now really matter, because they help make people make a decision before they even shake your hand or before they even sit in the table. So you have to think about these things in a much broader way to create interest in yourself, right? Like that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
And I think for restaurants, it's like you can't convey the smell, for example, or the ambience, or like the sound and like the light setting and everything you see when you go into your favorite restaurant. But what you can do is you can use some other tools. You can get some really fantastic images where you can kind of feel the whole thing. You can see the reviews, you can see people's experiences. And the same is true for personal branding, that there are some things that you do in a different way online to get the same view of you as a person. And some of it is just hanging out in other people's comment section and being friendly and helpful and have a conversation, which might seem weird because you're not used to doing it that way online. But in a real world setting, you wouldn't be at a networking event and just like avoid everyone and go around them.
Like just a kind of, well, I do. It's like,
but if you want to,
if you want to do something,
build business,
you got to work on that, right?
Just like be there and just like, you know, high five and just not like interact.
Who's that weirdo who high fives everyone at the door to the expo? Right? Like, I'll try it at Web Summit, see if it's the high five guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's I wanted to ask you a little bit more. Like, what is like the absolute like worst thing that you've seen in terms of personal branding? Like, do you have any like recovery stories that you're like, well, this really sucked, and then I had to fix that up?
I want to knock on wood.
Okay. My head's wood.
The people I've worked with so far, but also I qualify my clients. Everything, I don't want to promote necessarily things that are not aligned with what I want the world to be.
Okay.
But there are some things that I see happening all the time that people either should confront or get help with. LinkedIn burnout or burnout when building content in your personal brand is very real, and some of the top creators 2 years ago have barely no
so what
presence.
is LinkedIn burnout?
It's like entrepreneurial burnout. You just give up, you know, because you have to, it's like hitting the gym. If you get in shape and then you stop going to the gym or stop working out, you will not keep your fitness. And it's the same with your personal brand. If you stop building it or stop actively doing something about it online, it will, you will not keep that momentum going. And one thing is burnout. Another thing is, and that's very human too, when you become too big, you stop caring about your community, or you think it's not that important to engage with people or give them
it's going to survive purely on momentum, right?
Like, exactly. And then people stop following you, or people stop interacting with you. If they don't hear back from you, if you don't engage with them anymore, it does come back negatively to your personal brand. So that's one thing. That's when you kind of make it, and how do you go about it then? Another thing that I see happening a lot is burnout on the other end, where there's still a lot of professional thinking about spreading thought leadership in a certain way that is very fact-based, knowledge-based, and just share info. And people tend to give up because that doesn't give them the results they want. And instead of giving up, you need to tweak that and think about that in a different way, because now we do have ChatGPT that can summarize and present information to you very clearly. If you do want information, you can access it super fast and super easy and in big quantities.
Yeah, and digestible structure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of brand value or personal brand value in sharing information. The value lies in sharing it in a way that makes it relevant for your target audience and piques their interest in how you can help them out in that situation. And that's where the line becomes a little bit blurred in terms of how, for me, it's not a blurred line because I know exactly how to do that.
Yeah.
But
so is that where your fill is, right? Like that's where you step in. Like this is where this is who you're trying to reach. This is kind of the value that you're trying to push out there, and this is how you shape that content in that way for that audience.
Yes, in a very simplistic way. Personal branding obviously has many dimensions.
Yeah.
But the thing is that still a lot of, and it goes years back because it's a way we've been accustomed to becoming thought leaders, is by sharing information and facts. And now facts they should be there, but they're not enough. In themselves, facts are a commodity by now. It's about building that trust and connection and establishing yourself as an authority. And sharing info is not equal to authority anymore.
Yeah, having the knowledge doesn't qualify you.
Yeah.
That's like what you can execute with the knowledge, but that boils down to everything. It's like this person knows it, but this person doesn't.
Yeah.
And how do you want to follow the person that does it often? Because that shortcuts a lot for us. Like if I'm following someone just even in terms of trying to build some sort of presence for this podcast, is saying, okay, I follow people that can show me the how component of this, because the knowledge is still something I'm going to have to figure out the how on, and I don't actually know how to execute on the knowledge. So I think that's in everything, is that, going to someone with experience is always going to shortcut a lot of the learning for you. And that's why we go to people with experience.
But I think but now I'm speaking more from a corporate background, because corporate has a long history of sharing case studies, sharing thought leadership publications. And that does not necessarily mean that people will understand exactly how you can help them. So even though you do have 15 years or 20 years of experience in a certain field, putting a publication together about that field does not necessarily mean that people understand how you can get them results. And that's the whole essence about being able to continuously include people and give them opportunities to understand how can you help them in their particular situation. And also, a lot of people are still scared of asking for anything online. And a lot of people are very, very scared. And I still work with clients who I need to tell this to every day, that you do need to guide people in the way that you want them to take action. And that's actually a service to your followers, that they know exactly what you expect from them.
So, what's an example?
So example is, if you want to share some knowledge, or you want to establish your authority, if you want to, classic example with me, I would probably post something about the algo updates one of the coming weeks. Instead of just saying, these are the changes, I would say, I have seen these changes. This is what has happened. This is what I think will happen, or this is how I work with clients to solve this situation. If you have a similar situation, reach out to me, or visit my website, or do this. One action point, so they know they have a conclusion to that piece of information. And if you don't include that, it serves as entertainment. It serves as information or news or whatever, but you can't expect people to understand themselves what you mean with this info.
So as an example, I'm completely just bleeding information from you here, or knowledge from here. So as an example, on a post for the podcast on LinkedIn, it should be, I've had the pleasure of speaking to so-and-so about X. This information has helped me transform Y, or do whatever with Y. And if you are battling with something similar, you should watch the podcast.
Yeah, something like that. And then you have to, because the thing is, I love communication. It's so beautiful.
I can tell. It's like the thing, right? Okay.
Because the thing is, if you say, I'm thrilled to have had this person on board on this podcast, people will be like, cool, good for you, happy for you.
We're happy you got thrilled, right?
Exactly. Okay. But if you communicate it in a way that, for the last few years, I've really deep dived into building my personal brand. It's been a challenging journey, whatever. I'm still dealing with it. This is why, because I know if I get this right, I can do X, Y, Z in my business. That's why I put Gabby on my podcast, and we had this conversation. And if you have the same thoughts or issues in your business, and it's something you're struggling with, you can listen in on this podcast and get free information for an hour from a topic expert. That's a very different expectation to set.
Yeah, and I think we're also becoming a little bit, so that was very long in what you were saying. And so I think we've been conditioned that social is short.
Yeah.
Right? I've got Twitter told us it was 200, it used to be 140 characters, then it's 220 or something. Yeah, right? You get conditioned that I've got to say this really quickly.
Yeah.
Which is kind of killing communication, must be on some levels. And if you want to communicate well, you're going to need some more words, right?
Again, it's a mix, and it's how you are as a person as well. For me, it's always such a challenge to keep it short because I have so much to say and I want to use all the words, and you have to find a balance. But one of the key elements when having a strong personal brand, you actually have to be a really good storyteller. And part of the connection that happens with your audience is through storytelling and through letting them in on some of the transformations you've been through. And for those types of posts, you obviously need to use some more words. And again, it depends on what your purpose is and what your goal is for each post. And each post has different purposes. If you want to just announce something,
then just announce it.
Just announce it.
Yeah. But if you want to drive action, you need to talk about the action that you want to drive. And would you say that your personal brand is like, is it great? Like in terms of what you've created for yourself, would you say that it's great, or is it like typical? Like when I was working in IT, everyone else's PC was perfect, but mine didn't have a cover on it, and it was like kicked under the table, and it just worked. I knew that I could put and pull stuff in. I would never, treat it the way I treated any of my clients' PCs.
So it's a little bit of a mix because I have to treat myself as a client, and I have to be representative of what I want to. And
you pay terribly, right?
But the thing is that I also need to experiment to be testing the new things that are happening and to test out things on behalf of clients. So I have to lead the way. And some of those experiments just have to happen live. So first of all, a personal brand is never a set thing. It's always evolving. You're always building. Especially as an entrepreneur, you're evolving as a person all the time. And that has to be reflected in my personal brand. So it does have to grow and expand. And for me, it's not like, this is it. I'm here. But I do set a very good example for my clients when they take a look at my profile. And also I use it actively as my own marketing channel. So for me, it's absolutely essential that I'm successful. And I can also see that the more successful I get, the more successful my clients get. But the testing part has to be part of my
your process, right? Like process. You want to get it wrong on yours, but that's going to have some sort of cost for you.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
And, on the other hand, would I be an entrepreneur if I'm not testing things all the time? I don't think so. So it is very authentic to my brand.
It's difficult, especially in your space, to A/B test something, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got one, right?
Yeah.
Like you can create a fake one and then build that up and see kind of which works or which resonates, but that's not how it works.
I can see throughout my client portfolio, if this person says things this way, it works better for their audience. But if this person says things this way, it works better for their audience. And for me, when I say things this way, sometimes I need to say them 3 times before it actually strikes. So it's a very dynamic area of business to be in. And that's also very normal because the people's reputations that I'm scaling, they're all individuals and very different people. And that's also the way it has to be.
Yeah, but that puts you also on the cutting edge, right? On the front edge of all of this. So, which is a benefit to anyone wanting to work with you. There's massive plug here. But it does, because you're saying, I've looked at a portfolio of what's working, what's not working, what audience are responding to. And you're going to start to bucket your clients in very similar sets, and so you will shortcut many years for them in terms of learning that for themselves.
Yeah. But I have to say that it does require a lot of commitment to always be the leader that does test these things, and you're always committing, and it is a labor-heavy area still. So I always have to make sure that I carve out time for myself to actually do things at the same level that I would do for clients.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big thing that you need to learn as a business owner, no matter which area you work in, that you do need to prioritize yourself and your own initiatives as well. And that took me many years to learn, that I actually have to treat myself as a client as well and give that time, although it might seem that client work should take priority.
Yeah, but you're probably going to get to a threshold where you're going to have to say, I have to hire people.
Yeah.
The solopreneur is great, but at some point you're going to say, especially for yourself, you say well, if I want the quality in my business to be there, I'm going to need help. So there's going to be that day, I'm sure.
I mean, we'll see. So far, I have an excellent network of other freelancers and other topic experts where we can get together and we can help each other out. And I think for me as a solopreneur right now, my biggest challenge is that I do not have the time, and I also don't want to put the time into training people and motivating people. And when you work with fellow topic experts, you might need to pay a little bit more, but then you don't have to spend time on the motivation and encouraging and training part, which right now makes better sense for me in the way I want to
that's smart,
deliver value to my clients.
That's so just to understand what you're saying, find someone like you to do yours.
Or find someone who I know has been trained with the same mindset or same skills, or maybe a copywriter who is experienced in a little bit different field, but they can be realigned pretty easily, but they know themselves what it takes to meet deadlines, to meet clients' expectations, to be self-motivating. And for me, it's a very different area of a mode of operating. Most freelancers and solopreneurs are very self-driven, and they take a lot of responsibility over tasks, and they don't need to have, they are very used to structure their own days and structure their own work. They're very familiar with most of the tools. So it's a very easy plug and play. And I know that if there comes a day where I want to onboard some clients, but I don't have the capacity, I can easily give them an equal level of service. I don't have to, outsource it to a junior person or whoever.
Yes.
And in my area, I also need someone who has a bit broader experience with business. I need someone who actually can understand what a CEO might be going through in terms of leadership or
what
processes.
the pressures are, right?
Yeah.
Like it's you the CEO, you're thinking about like quite a lot, and now you have to think about this other aspect. And, and so, what qualifies as a client for you? You said that you do qualify clients. Like, when you kind of vet them, what are the criteria that you need in a client?
Some of it is very business focused, about revenue, about where they are in their business and their career. Some of it is also approvals and approval processes, because personal brands works best if they come from you as a person. So if I work with a C-suite who has to go through compliance and legal and align with the PR team, then the personal brand does not come through as an authentic brand, and it needs a whole different layer of strategy to be molded into what they want.
Yeah, so it's not agile at all, right?
It's not agile at all. And I work best with people, and I see the best results with people who have more agency about what they can say and how they can say it and how they can express themselves. And it has to be very close how you talk online and how you would talk as a person. How would you actually behave offline? It has to be you in it. So that's one of the major qualifiers. Another thing that works best for me and how I can deliver results best is if I work with people who are purpose-led in some sort of way. Maybe they are purpose-led in terms of how they develop their employees. Maybe they're purpose-led in terms of the message they want to share with the world. Maybe they want to change an agenda in some field. And that is a big qualifier in how I work with clients. Okay,
that's amazing. I think that when you're clear on that, you're going to attract the right type of clients. You're going to be doing the right type of work, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I, for some reason, and I think it's because I've been communicating a little bit about it, also attract a lot of ex-C-suite who left corporate, who might not appreciate the corporate way of doing things anymore, or founders who also want to build a work life that is different from corporate. Yeah. So I've actually been thinking a little bit of maybe I should talk about more about that side of things.
Yeah, well, it's a really tough place to be. I'm speaking from experience. Like, I was in a global like lead role for Zomato, then kind of moved back to Portugal. Then they exited markets, and then I'm like, well, what am I now? Like, I used to be global head of at Zomato, same thing. Pick up the phone when I spoke to someone, handed a business card when business cards were still a thing, but it was like that title was there and very clearly identified who I was. And now the company was gone from the title, and I was like, well, what am I now? And so that led me down the path. And, you know, like professional branding is probably something I need to look into, but it led me down the path of I need to get a coach and start developing internally. Like that's something that really had to happen, because I picked up a lot of baggage too. Like corporate gives you a lot of baggage. And, you know, and so that baggage was anxiety, insecurity, whatever it is. And I'm like, well, why are these things there? And then, because if I'm going to do this by myself, I'm going to stand on my own, I need help. And so that got me to the coach. So I think that it's a critical piece. And I think more and more people are moving out of corporate into startups or into the entrepreneurship journey, or their solopreneur journey. Like, they're all moving that way because it has a lot of perks. It has the flexibility. It has the control of the life that you want to live. But how do you do that, and how do you survive? So I think it's a critical role that you fill in.
And I also think it's about, once you step into that, you have to figure out, what is my narrative, and what is the narrative I want to build, and what is the narrative I want to control. And that is also a whole different area. How do you craft that? You know, how do you know all of these things? But it's very powerful when you do that, and you do understand that when you have a personal brand and you do build it yourself, you do own the narrative. And usually that also takes a little bit of getting used to, when a lot of C-suite are still used to work with traditional media and PR agencies that have pitches, and you do interviews, but then you actually don't really control what comes out on the other side. And now you have to take responsibility for that, and you have to be very aware of what you're building long term. And
there must be a place for it just on that, you know, the corporate side is like, you might not have a lot of agility in the corporate space to say or do what you want to do, but having someone walk with you down that path is like, when you do go into an interview, say, hey, say this, and this is how you will get your point across without detract. So everyone will win, but you won't come across from that looking like the corporate man. You will also still create some sort of identity while you're in the business.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the transformation, especially from corporate, is also, you do get a pretty hard fact check on reality and how business works when you suddenly have to do things in a non-corporate way. And bridging that, because there's also a lot of prejudges coming into a startup environment if you have a background in corporate. And bridging that and coming across as a person who is willing to learn some things and unlearn other things is also very, very valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has been hugely insightful. I don't know if there's any other topic that you want to touch on, but I'm all for it. Like, professional brand, need to build one. If I'm going to raise money for my startups, I have to get this sorted out. I'm like very clear that I'm missing something here, but I really enjoyed having you today.
Yeah, I enjoy talking, and as you know, I have the event coming up with Female Founder House. Actually one of the taglines is that investors don't just invest in your business, they invest in you as a person. And that applies to all business opportunities, because at the end of the day, people do invest in you.
So what is the Female Founders? How does it work? How are you connected to it? What are you going to be doing for them?
It's Female Founder House in New York. And they have a network of female founders and investors, and a community of supportive people. And I'm going to host a workshop on personal branding for them on next Friday.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Where will that be, in New York?
No, that's going to be a live event. We actually opened it up, so also non-members can take part of it. We think it's such a big and valuable topic to get ahead on. So we opened it up, and it's seemingly global.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. That's good. I wish you the best of luck, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Cool. Cheers.